When the Canucks miss the playoffs again.
When Jim Benning trades away all our picks.
When Goldolden is scratched for the third game in a row. C4 is there. With Sedin-like vision, Horvat's work ethic, and Petey's electric personality. Here comes the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast with Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Powered by Overtime Media.
C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Matt Lee in the hot box with Anna Forsyth. You can find me on Twitter at MattLee_61. You can find Anna Forsyth at AForsyth03. Not here for a second straight week, but has a good reason. Chris Golden at Lightforce.
Remains in our hearts.
Okay, he's not dead.
Dead to us. If he misses another week, he's dead to us.
That's right, Anna. And that's, of course, Anna Forsyth's voice that you hear. Chris Golden is on what we can best describe as daddy duty.
Yeah. All the kind of fun trials and tribulations that come with parenting that Matt and I don't know anything about.
You know what? I don't want to speak on behalf of Chris, and he will appreciate me quickly mentioning that he started another podcast, if you can believe it. His what is it? Like, it's a parenting kind of podcast?
Fun take on parenting, I guess.
Good for you, Chris.
Yeah.
Like, let's
he's
ignore
so busy.
Let's ignore the fact that he's committing podultery again, like for a third time.
Yeah, it's a little menage a trois that you have
It is a
going
menage
on.
a trois. Like, he's got us, he's got that crappy video game podcast thing that he loves. He's got this new parenting one. Like, good for you.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, he does. Is he
calling it the Dad Cast? I think that's
it's
what,
called Nerdy Dadcast.
Okay, that's what Sean at Bearded Canucks 03 on Discord. A shout out to all of our patrons listening live, by the way. That's what he's referred to it as. So I'll take his word for it.
And friend of the show, Annalise, has reported that it's very good. I haven't listened yet, but we support his endeavors.
We support his endeavor. I was told there'd be no English. English is not my first language. And a quick heads up that we've got friend of the show, Cam Robinson, joining us on the show today. Today being Monday, December 2nd, Team Canada announcing their World Junior Selection Camp roster. Not on the roster, though, Jet Wu and Carson Fogt.
Yeah?
I mean, the former, I think we were the most surprised at. And we'll talk to Cam a little bit later. He was actually more surprised that Carson Fogt wasn't named to the selection camp.
Interesting.
So we'll hear that from him. We'll also talk, of course, about other Canucks prospects, the injury status of Olli Levy. We talked about Tyler Madden's meteoric sort of rise, if you will, since being drafted in 2018. Niels Hoglander was one that he really liked to talk about. We talked about Quinn Hughes and how he's been since the 2018 draft as well. The Hughes versus Makar Calder Trophy race heating up, if you will. All part of that discussion with Cam Robinson, so we'll get into that. Also, we'll talk about the road trip that was Anna Forsyth, and it was the 3-3 road trip.
Yeah, which isn't bad.
Not bad, but we'll get into it, but there were some points left on the table.
Oh, for sure.
And we'll talk a little bit about the homestand that's coming up. We'll talk about Alex Burrows' Ring of Honour night, which is happening tomorrow night right here at Rogers Arena. So all that coming up next right here on the C4 Podcast, CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and catching up with friend of the show, Cam Robinson, whose work you can find at many places, including Elite Prospects, Dobber Prospects, as well as on Sportsnet 650. Cam, it has been a while since we chatted, and first and foremost, want to give you a belated congratulations on the newest addition to the Robinson family.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. Yeah, little Osha, she's doing well. She's a good baby. She sleeps, she eats, and she doesn't holler too much. So we're pretty grateful for that.
And I know it's a second pup added to the Wolf Pack. Plus, you've got the World Junior Championships on the horizon as well. Things are definitely, I'm assuming, ramping up yet again in your schedule.
Oh man, it doesn't seem to be ever any calm before the storm. It's always just rolling around here. So maybe this summer I'll take a month off or something to give myself a real break. But no, with the World Juniors coming up, I wasn't going to release a rankings ahead of them, but I'm feeling inspired, so I might drop that out here in the next couple of weeks before the World Juniors too. So add one more thing to the plate.
For sure. And thanks again for taking the time to chat. It seems like today's as good a time as any to really discuss prospects. And we'll start with the news of the day. Team Canada, Cam, releasing their selection camp roster in preparation for the 2020 World Juniors. There were some notable Canuck-related omissions on that 31-player list, among them Jet Wu and Carson Focht. You mentioned on Twitter as well this morning you were more surprised at Focht not being named than Wu. Why was that?
Just the way that they've been playing, the two of them playing there for Calgary for the Hitmen. I think Focht, he's been great. He started off like a rocket, and he was getting a ton of points, and he was driving play. The production has cooled off a little bit. He's still clicking at least a point a game. I don't have his metrics in front of me here, but he's keeping up that pace anyways. He's a hard-nosed center who has some good speed. He's just one of these kind of Swiss Army knife players that I figured the Canadians would be interested in bringing at least to camp. So he showed well at the summer showcase. I thought that was going to get him some goodwill, and obviously the start that he's had with the Hitmen this year and the way he concluded last season, that he would have been a really interesting player to come in as the 12th or 13th forward if he had a good camp. And, maybe he's centering your fourth line. Maybe he's one of these guys that can jump up and play the third line wing if there's an injury or if someone's, going a little cold. So I just thought that he had that unique skill set that he can kind of play in any role, kill penalties. He could be on a second power play unit sort of thing. I was talking to some scouts and they figured the same thing early on this season. So a little surprising that he wasn't invited, but at the same time, looking at the selection camp roster, they've decided to bring in a whole host of young players. And I don't believe that, they're going to have 5 or 6 draft eligibles up front on their team. But they're bringing these kids in there to give them, a taste of what's to come. And so, players like Dawson Mercer and Quentin Byfield will be there. But these draft eligible kids is that the ones that don't make the team, maybe Cole Perfetti, they're going to be there next year, and they're going to probably play a sizable role. So you want to give them an opportunity. And so I guess if they didn't see a spot for Focht, that there's not really a whole lot of reason to bring him in because he's going to age out after the season anyway. So, and then looking at Jet Wu, he's been underwhelming this season, and it's a transition to a new club. The Warriors were a little more offensive last year, and he was a big part of that. And this season, the offense hasn't come along. He has gotten a little unlucky from some of the games I've watched, and I feel like his play has ramped up as the season has worn on. But, he considers himself a defensive defenseman first and foremost, and I really feel like he's tailoring his game to that side of things a little bit more this year. We haven't seen the big thundering hits. We haven't seen the big clapper as much. And to be honest with you, he's just kind of been quiet out there. And when he is noticed, it hasn't been always for the positive. And so I fully believe that he's played himself out of an invite and probably out of a position on this team.
Okay, so we'll come back to Wu in just a second here, and we'll start with Focht. And you mentioned maybe there was a role for him as that depth, big-bodied player down the middle, but obviously Team Canada, like you mentioned, going into a bit of a different direction. On the note of Focht, though, I mean, this is a 5th-round pick from 2019, and we acknowledge this is only 6 months removed from his draft, but has your view of Carson Focht as a prospect changed at all in that 6-month period? Has his stock increased dramatically, or is this simply him maybe surpassing the expectations of your traditional 5th-rounder?
To be honest with you, drafted as an overage player of the 2019 haul for Vancouver, at the time, he was the most surprising pick for me. And when I was there in Vancouver at the draft, I was sitting right next to a Western scout, and we kind of looked at each other. And when they picked him in the 5th, and eyebrows kind of raised, being like, "Really interesting, okay." And I did see a couple of his games down the stretch last season where he looked like a different player. He looked like he was starting to figure it out. But at the same time, I saw him as, an overage kid who probably didn't have a ton of upside, and just there was probably some higher end talent left on the board. I talked to Judd Brackett about it right after the draft, and he really liked his motor, his compete level. He felt that development was starting to take rapid acceleration. And I'm always a fan of giving the benefit of the doubt to Judd, because that guy knows exactly what he's talking about. And so, yes, I believe my viewing of him has changed, and what he's done this season. He's hard on the puck. He has a great release. Coming down the wing, he can get it off on the fly. He's good at setup too, but I really like his transitional game. And I think that this kid has the potential to be kind of a bottom 6 forward in the NHL, which is, that's a win coming out of the 5th round, especially as a kid that you're drafting as a draft +1 player. So I think he's taken the nice steps, and my view of him has changed even in the last 6 months.
Okay, fair enough. And let's come back to Jet Wu. And you mentioned this is a player who, in a different environment in Calgary, after spending the year in Moose Jaw the last couple years, the numbers have declined. He's been kind of underwhelming, as you've put it as well. Where do you currently stand with Wu, the Canucks second rounder in 2018? Is this a temper your expectations moment for fans with Wu, or are fans rightfully have reason to be excited about him and his outlook?
Well, I think that they should still be excited to potentially be getting a NHL defenseman outside of the first round. And again, once you get past whatever pick 20, the likelihood of pulling an NHL player, it diminishes greatly. And so, the Canucks got him in the top 40, 35 or 37 or whatever it was. And he wasn't supposed to be a big offensive guy. He showed a little bit of that with Moose Jaw in his draft year when some players were injured and he was elevated up the lineup, and then he ran into some injuries and his role kind of decreased, and then numbers went with it. And then last year when he stepped up and he was over a point a game player, the big open ice hits, he racks up the penalty minutes. That was a great sign. He was a little invisible in their playoff round, if I recall, and didn't look as sturdy defensively too, which was a bit concerning. And then this year, the defense has been fine. The offense has gone quiet. And so I think that what you're looking at is probably the type of player that he's going to be. And so normally these guys, when they're playing their 4th WHL season or CHL season, they're going to put up the big metrics, and the casual fan is going to look at that and be like, let's get him into the NHL lineup right away, a la Cole Lind a couple years ago. And then we see when they transition up into the American League that, that's a big step up from junior to pro hockey. And so I expected Wu to have a big season. I expected him to get invited to this camp and have a really good shot at being kind of that number 5, 6, 7 defenseman on this team, because he's another player that can play a lot of roles for you, and he can intimidate, and he's hard in the corners in front of the net, and he could play on a second power play unit and things like that. And so now we're seeing maybe that the offense isn't going to be translating as well. And now I don't want to even kind of look at rolling sample sizes of 25 games don't mean everything. And so he might go off and be above a point a game for the next 40 games this year and kind of put a halt to this thought. But I expect him to move up to Utica next season, and that transition to be slow and to be a little difficult for him, as it was for Cole Lind and Jonas Gadjevich. And it's just a difficult league to play in, and that's probably going to temper a lot of expectations. And then, let's look at 2021, 21, 22, when he starts to get his feet under him. And so he's still a big, strong, right shot kid who has NHL upside and probably has number 4 upside still too. So I think that's a lot to be excited about, especially with the Canucks defensive pipeline, which is pretty bare at this point.
All right, and we'll return to prospects chat in just a second here, but I want to take a detour, Cam, if you will, for a hot second so we can talk about Quinn Hughes. And I will wind the clocks back to 2018 in Dallas. You were there. You saw Arizona go a bit off the board when they selected Barrett Hayton at 5. That, of course, sent that ripple effect across the board where Detroit basically gifted Philip Zadina at 6. And a lot of people, of course, had Zadina in their consensus top 3. I remember at the time you called the Canucks selection of Quinn at 7 an absolute home run. Those were your words. And 30 games into his NHL career, is Hughes surpassing even your highest expectations this early?
It's tough because, I had him ranked number 3 with a bullet on my board for a long time leading up to that draft. And so for my money, he was right there with Dahlin and Svechnikov, and we're looking at him, like you say, 30 games into his career, and he's making good on those promises. And so, I've been asked over the past 18 months since that draft, what kind of upside does this kid have? And I was saying it when he was at Michigan, and he wasn't putting up a ton of points there either. Is that he's so skillful that when you put him with these high end players, is that he's got 60 plus point upside, he's got Norris Trophy voting upside sort of thing, and he's doing it. So did I think he was going to come out and put up a 65-70 point pace as a rookie? Probably not, just because I like to err on the side of caution with young kids. But no, he's been so dynamic, and he's really been the straw that stirs the drink on that top power play unit that was so stagnant last year. Everyone was very excited to have Petey and Besser just teeing off on either sides on that power play, and it just didn't really come to fruition. Now you see, you get rid of Edler, who's fairly stagnant on and immobile on that blue line, and you add Quinn Hughes, and he makes everything happen. You can't contain him. His skating is supreme. His vision, the way he can anticipate and read the play, it's very impressive and obviously enjoyable to watch. And he's been doing this since he was playing for the Marlboros 100 years ago in Pee Wee hockey in Toronto too. So he's a fun player to watch, and the sky's the limit for him. And Vancouver was very, very fortunate to get him at 7. There was really no reason he should have been there. I'm sure Montreal's kicking themselves for not taking him at 3.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of fans who considered it a blessing in disguise almost that the Canucks lost the NHL draft lottery, if you will. I mean, safe to say, I think that, you had Quinn Hughes at number 3 with a bullet, as you said. I think it's safe to say if we were doing a redraft 2018, he'd be a consensus top 3 among most people nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. And, the buzz on the draft floor too, though, was that there was a couple of teams that really liked Barrett Hayton, and that if he was there at 7, the whispers were that Vancouver would have taken Hayton over Hughes at that draft. And I like Barrett Hayton a lot, but so it would have been interesting if they did end up with a lottery selection and picked 3, and, would they have gone Hayton at 3? Would they have gone Hughes? Who knows? But so for them to fall down a couple spots and still get Quinn Hughes, it's, that's going to look like the pick of the draft at this point.
We'll keep this question really tight, and we'll hopefully keep the answer pretty concise as well. But where do you stand on the whole Hughes versus Makar for the Calder Trophy race?
It's hard to not kill Makar at this point.
Yeah.
What he's doing there is tremendous, and they're doing the same thing. So basically, is they both have been given kind of the keys to the car and that top power play unit, the Rolls Royce of both very, very impressive power play units, and Makar's got McKinnon to work with, and Quinn has Petey, and I think that they're both going to put up a ton of points. Makar's a year older. He's bigger. He's a right shot kid. So there's a couple of elements there that work for him. And then being a year older too, is that that's not going to go into the Calder Trophy voting mindset too much. But looking at long-term upside is that, let's look at what Quinn Hughes is doing in a year, because when Makar was his age, he was in college still and putting up, Hobie Baker-like numbers, but Hughes is doing it in the show and putting up, a 70-point pace. So I love them both. I want them in my fantasy leagues, and I don't have either. I'm working the phones, but no, it's to have those two in the Western Conference, penalty killers are going to be having nightmares for the next decade.
You ever wonder if you could get into a hypothetical time machine and say, if the Canucks had the choice in 2017 between Cale Makar or Elias Pettersson, do you think it would have been a tough decision at all for them? Or do you think they would have continued to stick with Pettersson if they were presented that option between the two?
Man, I have it on good authority that those two were 1-2 on their board. And I can't tell you who was 1 and who was 2, but yeah, there was a few scouts out there that had PD1, and there was a few scouts out there that had Makar number 1. And there's been a lot of buzz since that draft that Vancouver had those guys 1-2, and I'd like to think they had PD. That's who I would pick. I would still take Pettersson over Makar, but those two are looking dynamite for sure.
Yeah, worth pointing out that assuming Quinn Hughes is at least nominated for the Calder Trophy, it would mark the first time since I believe quite a while anyway that one NHL team has had 3 players who have at least been nominated for the Calder Trophy in the last 10 years. Cam, can you guess which team and which players have had at least 3 Calder Trophy nominations over the last 10 years?
I'd probably guess Pittsburgh with Malkin, Crosby, and then.
But 10 years though.
Sorry, what do you mean?
So from 2009 to 2019, only one team has had at least 3 players in that period who have been at least nominated for the Calder Trophy.
Oh God, hey. I got nothing. Who are they?
Okay, so it's the Colorado Avalanche, and I'm assuming you can get the 3 players from here. It being Landeskog, McKinnon, and Matt Duchene.
Yeah,
it's a tough one anyway.
Yeah.
Let's continue talking prospects here, Cam. In his sophomore season with Northeastern, Tyler Madden, I think you've had him in your Twitter feed quite often already this year. He's got 12 goals in, which is the same amount he had last year in his rookie season, but in 20 fewer games. You've copped to having him ranked in the 4th round ahead of his 2018 draft, saying he should have been in the 1st. For you, how meteoric has Madden's rise been over that last 1.5 year period?
Oh man, I'm literally, I just kind of put the finishing touches on a little article for him for the Daily Hive that'll come out this week, and I copped to that mistake as well. So it's really easy to give yourself back pats when you go against the grain and you're right. it's not as simple to stand up and say, I was wrong. And I was a big champion of Jake Wise. And when that pick came up, I was like, here you go. There's a layup for Vancouver in the third round. And they went Tyler Madden. And again, the eyes kind of, I liked Madden. He was an interesting player. I saw him more in the first half of his draft eligible season, where he was, I don't want to say underwhelming, but he just wasn't as impactful. And then I saw him just the one time kind of down the stretch, and he looked like he was figuring it out. He was taking those steps, but he was rail thin, and I was questioning kind of the high end upside offensively, because this was a guy who was putting up far below a point a game pace in the USHL, and he's a late birth date too, so it didn't scream high end production. But again, Judd Brackett and those guys out east there that track them, they know Northeastern is a great program, and he was stepping in, and he was going to basically fill Adam Gaudette's empty role on the first line, on the first power play, on a penalty kill. It was just basically set up for him, and he jumped into that role, and he has thrived. And the steps that he has taken, as you say, it's been meteoric, the rise that he's done. And I actually want to send Judd a message and just be like, you got to show me your notes on this kid from his draft year, because I missed something. He's been so good this year. His shot rates are elevating. He's one of the league leaders for shots in the nation. Obviously, the 12 goals are all co-leading the nation too. He's firmly on the Hobie Baker radar. If he wasn't 152, 155 pounds, I would say it's a lock that he turns pro this year. I still think that it's a very, very good chance that he will turn professional and go to Utica down the stretch, as long as Northeastern doesn't, run long in the Frozen Four. But no, his upside is very high. I think that he's basically a first round pick in their system, and they got him in the third. And that's the kind of stuff you need to be thriving, especially when you start to be a good team and you're not picking in the top 10, is you need players coming up, pushing up the depth chart, so that you can get rid of, shed some of this dead weight on your roster that you're paying $4 or $5 million for these guys that are in their 30s, and slide in an entry-level contract that can produce and can step in and fit and gel. I talked about some of these players like Lind and Gadjevich and Wu that I feel, struggled or will struggle in their first professional season. I'm not expecting the same things from Madden. He's feisty. He's got the great shot. He's got the great speed. He's dynamic. He can play in different situations. I have a feeling that he's going to step in there, and Trent Call, despite kind of the reputation of not being such a great mentor for young players, I think he is going to love this kid and put him into positions to succeed right away. And his time in the minors probably won't be too long.
You touched on it a little bit first a few minutes ago, Cam, and the conventional school of thought, if he's following the Adam Gaudette model of development, would be that there's at least a conversation to be had about whether or not Tyler Madden turns pro, because of the fact he is about 150 pounds, a slighter frame than Gaudette had at the time. Are you entirely convinced that maybe he doesn't go back to Northeastern for a junior year? Like, it seems like if ever there was a conversation to have for a player to go back for a third college season, it would be the case of Tyler Madden.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of the asterisk that I put on when I consider him. His skill set deems him worthy of moving on, but the college schedule is pretty well set up for kids to live in the gym during the week, and then practicing and working out and eating, and you're able to put on some weight during the season versus CHL, AHL, NHL schedules where you often will shed 6-7 pounds throughout the year, just because the schedule is so demanding and you're traveling and you're playing so much. And so he's got an opportunity to play 35, 40 games sort of thing in school next year, and kind of live in the weight room and maybe turn pro at, 165. This kid's never going to be playing at 200 pounds. Right. His game is predicated on speed and shiftiness and that agility that he has. And so, hopefully we can get him up to 170, 175. We said the same thing about Petey though too. And Pettersson, he's starting to thicken up quite well. I don't know if every body type will have that ability, but I think that he doesn't need to be 190 pounds to turn professional. And so if he can get himself up at, I read a little something that he's already put on about 5 pounds of muscle from last year, which is something on his frame. And so, maybe by the time we're talking about June or next October, if he's coming to camp, maybe he's 162 if he has a good off season of training or something like that. So I absolutely think that that's a possibility that he goes back to Northeastern for a third and final year. I'd love to see him come out and turn pro, but yeah, we'll have to see.
We have time for 2 more questions on 2 more prospects, and we'll start with the one who's obviously had a bit of a setback once again, and it's Olli Juolevi. Cam. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not panicked at all, but 10 being most panicked, where do you stand on Olli Juolevi and his development?
I don't know if I'm panicked as much as just it's frustrating and it's disappointing.
I mean, possibly facing another year of lost development, a crucial year of lost development after already missing the bulk of last year, though.
It would be devastating if he was kind of wiped out for this season. I did see something. I haven't checked into it much, that he was back in Utica and that he was skating, obviously non-contact and just kind of out there doing a little skate. But even if that's the case, like we'll take that, because last year I really thought that he had things going in the right direction. He had the great Liga playoffs for TPS at the end of 2017-18, and then he came over and obviously 12 or 13 points in under 20 games for the Comets as a rookie defenseman. Like he was looking good, and now he was chiseling some points there that he probably shouldn't have had. And defensively, he was still getting turnstiled at times, but it was progress. And for a rookie AHL defender, that's what we wanted to see. And then obviously the knee injury was a huge setback to lose those games at his age, and then again to struggle a little bit this year, and then to go down with another injury. It's tough to see for a kid, but at the same time, he's 21. He'll be 21 this entire season. If he comes back and he can play at a 40, 45 point pace for the Comets, we just need to forget about where he was drafted, because you can't go back in time and you can't change that. I'm sure everybody would like to, and it's not his fault he was drafted that high. If he was taken in the second round, he'd still be a viable prospect with just some injury concerns. I still feel like if he can get healthy and he can reach his upside, that he could still be a player that plays, anchors a third pair or is a complementary guy on your second pair. My strength of belief in that is slowly diminishing with each injury, and with the mobility issues maybe coming into play a little bit more. So it's a wait and see with this kid, and again it really hurts because they need him to be a player. The left side of their prospect depth chart isn't very strong. Their defensive depth chart at all in the pipeline isn't very strong. And so, they went out and drafted 10 forwards in the draft last year. I imagine they're going to be adding some blue liners this draft here. But, they're basically trying to fill the holes with Brogan Rafferty's, and they're going out there and getting those NCAA free agent signings to try to plug the gaps that are missing in the pipeline. So, they obviously put a ton of stock into him becoming a real player, and that hasn't happened yet. And it may not happen ever, and so that is going to hurt them long term.
Last prospect question I got to ask you, and we'll let you pick between the two players who have populated your Twitter feed quite a bit over the last few months. Cam, Cole Lind, he's up to 16 points in 22 games this year in Utica. He's asked to play a bigger offensive role, and he seems to be thriving in it. Niels Hoglander seems to be making regular appearances in your feed. Which of these two are you most excited about at this point?
Yeah, they're I'd say they're similar players for their upsides. I feel like Lind screams third liner to me. That one of these guys that can. He's a bit of a bigger bodied guy. He fancies himself a power forward. He was chucking the knucks back just this weekend with I think it was Rasmus Sandin.
We saw that his first professional fight.
Yeah, and they were throwing him too. And he's always had that edge, that grit to his game. What I really like to see out of him this season is that he's no longer deferring to the veterans. So obviously he's been playing. He's made a nice relationship with Reed Boucher, who's kind of the prototypical quadruple A player who's too good for the minors but not good enough for the show, and they've been making some magic happen. And I'd still like to see him shoot the puck a lot more. He was a high volume shooter in junior, and he had the ability to convert from out high. We haven't seen that as much, but he's getting in there. He's getting the greasy goals. He's setting up plays. His transition game, even throughout the season, I felt has improved. So he still could kind of make some interesting decisions with the puck coming out of his zone and through the neutral zone, and he's starting to clean those up a little bit. But yeah, I see him as being a really nice kind of third line player that if an injury arises can fill in up your lineup a little bit, where I see Hoglander has higher end. He has very high end puck skills. So this kid can dangle in a phone booth. So I think that ability alone kind of offers him a higher likelihood of being a top six guy who can contribute offensively a little more. Another player who has a great motor and is feisty despite being 5'9". He is built like a fire hydrant. And so guys bounce off him. They learn pretty quickly not to mess with him. And we've seen him throw those nasty reversed elbows that are dirty as hell, but it keeps guys honest. That's for sure. So he's a dynamic player who I think he's riding a 4-game point streak in the SHL right now. So he's starting to get his groove back. He's been kind of locked in onto the second line again where he had kind of slid down the lineup for a touch there, and his minutes decreased. So he's back up seeing 16, 17, 18 minutes a night, and he's producing too. So he's going to be big at the World Junior Championships this year. So him and Samuel Fajimo will be leaned on heavily for the Swedes up front, where they're kind of bringing in some young kids in Lucas Raymond and Alexander Holtz. So he'll be looked at to lead, and I imagine that he's going to have a similar tournament to a kid like Emil Bemstrom did last year for the Swedes, where he captained them and he was an all-around player for them offensively and defensively. And now we see, Bemstrom's in Columbus and he's doing very well. I think Hoglander's still behind in that developmental model because Bemstrom scored. I think he led all U20 scores last year in the SHL, which is pretty darn impressive. But no, I like Hoglander probably a little bit more to be an impact offensive player. I think he would mesh well with a guy like Pettersson. Whereas, we could look at maybe Podkolzin being a bull next to Bo Horvat if everything broke right for both those kids. So, and Lind, maybe he's hanging out with Gaudette on the third line. These are all, ideal circumstances, but they're realistic too.
Yep, fair enough. And last question, before we let you go here, Cam, on the eve of Alex Burrows night, your favorite Alex Burrows memory?
Oh man, it's got to be Slay the Dragon, right?
Slaying the Dragon. I think so too. But I think so too. I would also say a honorable mention goes to the game where he scored. I think it was against Carolina when they had that lengthy losing streak, and it seemed like everyone was on the verge of being fired. Ooh. And it was that home game. Do you remember that one? And anyway, I think that one was an underrated one.
I feel like that was Carolina broke that 10-game losing streak.
Yeah, it was like a 10-game losing streak or something to that effect. That's I think an underrated one.
To pull in Duncan Keith's hair too, just because Duncan Keith's a bit of a dirtbag, so I'm not even mad about that. Yeah,
fair enough. He is Cam Robinson. You can find his work at Elite Prospects, Dobber Prospects, and on Sportsnet 650. Cam, where can they follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, hockey_Robinson, doing some gifts, doing some words, writing, doing a lot of fun things with a lot of people. So you can check me out there.
All right, and I think we'll catch up with you after the World Juniors, Cam. But all the best until then, and a happy holidays to you and the Robinson family.
Thanks, Matt. You as well.
All right.
So let's talk about the road trip that was, Anna, and of course the Vancouver Canucks capping things off with a huge win over the Edmonton Oilers. But before that, not so great against the Pittsburgh Penguins.
No. Do you watch that game? It was
tough. I watched it.
It was tough. It was like watching 3 different games. Every period was a completely different character
You might call it was a Forrest Gump-like effort. You just didn't know what you were going to get.
Sure.
So refresh my memory for those who have tried to put it away from their brains, but were the Canucks up 6-3?
6-3, Matthew.
In the third period, right?
6-3.
So it was a 3-goal lead in the third period. Just let it slip. 4 unanswered goals. The Pittsburgh Penguins win 7-6 in regulation. So what frustrates me, number one, is that they didn't even get it to overtime. Like, getting just a point would have been fine at that point. Like, it's one thing to respect the Pittsburgh Penguins as a team on the road. It's the 5th game of a 6-game road trip. But to come away empty-handed, like, there's no way a team should not have at least a point after scoring 6 goals in a game.
Yeah. Like, it's crazy. Obviously, Pittsburgh is always going to be a tough opponent, but they're without Sidney Crosby. Obviously, they've still got Malkin. They've still got a lot of good players. They're very few on the Jags front. But really, when you dominate a game that much in the second period, you want to be able to close it out. Like, Canucks are not good with playing with leads, especially narrow ones. So, but three goals seems like a comfortable lead and should be enough, even with a whole period left, to close out that game.
Yeah, I think so too. And I don't know, there have been a couple occasions already this year where I just woke up the next morning feeling angry.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, I think the Dallas one still annoyed me more because they didn't turn up at all in that game. But it was very frustrating because, yeah, we were so much in that game.
Mm-hmm.
We should have just won it.
So we'll move past the Pittsburgh Penguins loss. And we'll get into what worked on the finale of that road trip, which was against the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I think you and I talked on the Monday before this game saying that if there was a game in that road trip where it was a must-win, it was the 2 games against the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, we did say it was huge if they managed to do both of beat Edmonton in both of those, considering, I mean, Edmonton, best team in the West. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, divisional rival. So that would have been huge. And from the Saturday game, you almost expected a better effort on Sunday.
What was the bigger achievement on Saturday night? I want to know. The fact that we won or that Louis Eriksson scored?
I wondered if that was going to be your next sentence. Yeah, that was crazy. And, I've been listening back to our previous shows, and a lot of it we're talking about the lack of effort from Louis Eriksson and kind of how embarrassing that is from the Canucks. But he has been playing a little better, at least effort-wise.
Has he, though? Because we'll talk about the Sunday game in a moment.
Okay, yeah. But even on Sunday, he wasn't doing nothing, right? We maybe would have preferred it if we went back to doing nothing. But, yeah, I can't fault him on the Saturday. And, it wasn't just a warm body. I do think he did play well. But, again, it was an isolated incident, and he disappointed us again.
By the way, when Louis Eriksson scored that goal, I feel like that was the most emotion I've ever seen on his face in his entire tenure with the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
That was a guy who was really happy to score what I can only characterize as a tap-in goal.
Yeah. It was pure relief. But, as we said, he was right back to disappointing us. So.
Louis giveth and Louis taketh away.
Yeah. I think that was his, last gift to us, parting gift.
As a whole, though, on that Saturday game, Tanner Pearson really impressed. His first 4-point game in his NHL career. I thought it was very suspicious at first when we saw going into that Saturday night game that top line was Pearson, Horvat, and Eriksson. I'm like, what is Travis Green cooking up? And, of course, that line was the one that was on for the most goals for the entire evening.
Yeah.
So
I know I was definitely with you on that one, at questioning what was going on there, but yeah, it did seem like he knew what he was doing. Also, kind of heating up in that game and yesterday, Josh Levo's kind of battling his way back, and I was kind of getting a little tired on him. Maybe
you had some ants in your pants on Josh Levo, especially when we stacked him up against Sven Berchi.
Yeah.
So is Josh Levo re-entering the good graces of Anna Forsyth?
Yeah, he is.
I mean, I think Josh Levo is what he is. He is a very serviceable middle six winger.
Right.
Kind of doing what we had hoped Marcus Granlund was going to do at some point.
Yeah,
but
Granlund.
Levo can obviously play up and down the line. I think he's he can play on the fourth line if you ask him to as well.
Yeah, but he's most comfortable, in that maybe third line role.
I do think that there is something to be said about the versatility that Josh Levo also seems to bring. That I think Travis Green, of course, really appreciates. So I have admittedly wavered a little bit on how much I like Josh Levo, but it seems apparent over the last few games that he's a good player. He just needs to be consistent for more than just a stretch of games.
Yeah. So, and we're not expecting him to be a first-line guy ever, but yeah, it would be nice to see this continue and contribute in that middle six role, as you say.
So getting back to Louis on Sunday. Now, Louis scores a goal on Saturday against the Edmonton Oilers, and then he takes two not bad penalties, but questionable. Like the Darnell Nurse one, you can talk about all day. It looked like a dive.
Yeah.
The first one I would tend to agree was a penalty, but no matter how you slice it, Louis Eriksson is in the box, I believe, for both Leon Draisaitl power play goals.
Yeah.
And that's probably something that undid a lot of the good things he had done on Saturday.
Yeah.
So where do you stand now with Louis Eriksson? Is this someone who you really want to see succeed, but you just can't see it happening?
No, I think I've long since given up on Louis. I think just the Canucks fan reaction at seeing him score on Saturday was amusing, to say the least. I was watching it in a big group in a bar, actually after the Athletic Live event. So that was a fun part. But everyone was just so confused. They didn't know whether to celebrate or not. But yeah, I think either way, he's not I haven't changed my mind. Saturday didn't change my mind.
It didn't flip the switch, if you will. Can I also just quickly bring up as an aside, it is nice to see Zach Kassian is enjoying some modicum of success in Edmonton. Of course, it's coming at the expense of the Vancouver Canucks on more occasions than not. But we had talked for many years, Anna, about the potential of Zach Kassian, and now we're starting to see a little bit of it in Edmonton.
Yeah, I think that's a real feel-good story, and I think you can't be mad at it because I think the Canucks did what they could. I know he had a lot of issues, but I think the main kind of part in turning that round was him, and he wasn't ready to deal with them when he was with the Canucks. It took going to Montreal and hitting rock bottom for him to kind of deal with his issues. So the fact that he's done that and he's kind of having a resurgence, yeah, it's a really good thing to see.
A quick question for you. Would you rather have Zach Kassian or Jake Virtanen?
Still Jake Virtanen.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it close?
Ish. But I think
are
it's
they
a
cut from the
comfortable-
same cloth?
Yeah, I think they're both people that aren't, tough enough to be playing that fourth liner role and more skilled than they've been given credit in the past. And they can do that sort of job as that kind of drive to the net winger. Yeah, I guess that's the same.
I
Yeah,
think it's
way.
close, but like there is something to be said. Like Zach Kassian is clearly entering his quote unquote prime years. I'm not sure how old he's. Like I think he's around 24 now at this point.
Yeah, and obviously his journey's been
and Virtanen's
skewed.
still around the 22 years of age kind of territory. So there's a couple years that Kassian has on Virtanen, but in terms of who's the better player right now between the two, I might lean Kassian.
Sure.
Or is he benefiting from McDavid and Draisaitl?
I mean, who wouldn't?
I would benefit from McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, exactly. He's also in a different environment.
Yep.
Like, he's in the best place he could be to succeed. Even at, his present good, what we presume is a good mental state, I'm not sure if he would thrive in Vancouver still. So, yeah, I think I'd still take Virtanen because I do think he is on an upward curve.
Yeah, I think so too. Anything else? Any other takeaways that you have from the last couple Edmonton games, Anna? Suspicious that Jacob Markstrom got the start in back-to-back contests? Or do we know why now because
I
he's
think
been
we
granted...
know why now.
So I guess we didn't know at the time, but I did think at the time it was suspicious that Markstrom was getting the start over Demko in a back-to-back situation. And obviously now it's a little bit more understandable. Jacob Markstrom granted the leave of absence by the Canucks to attend his father's funeral. So some positive thoughts to Jacob Markstrom and the Markstrom family during this difficult time, of course. But I think at the time it did seem a little suspicious.
Yeah, no, for sure. I wouldn't have done it myself if I was a coach, all things being equal.
Mm-hmm.
But we now, of course, know that it wasn't. Yeah, I think the one remaining thing to say on the Edmonton game on Sunday is that, yes, like, the refereeing was pretty bad. But I don't think that wholly explains the result. And I do think it's worrying that we couldn't put in a more offensive effort against a team that really has not a lot beyond their two star players there.
I will say this. For a team that is trying to chase and catch the Edmonton Oilers in the, at least in the Pacific Division standings, it is a little disappointing that the Canucks couldn't follow up that win on Saturday with another win on Sunday. Like, this is me being greedy, of course, but, if the Edmonton Oilers don't win that game and Vancouver wins both games, we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks only being 3 points back of the Oilers for the conference lead.
Yeah.
With the game in hand, I should add, as well. And this isn't to say that the Vancouver Canucks aren't in a good position. The reality is, though, that leaving points on the board against the Pittsburgh Penguins and then dropping that Edmonton Oilers game, all of a sudden, Adam, we're at this point in the season, this Monday, looking at the Canucks actually being outside, looking in the Pacific wildcard division standings sort of question, territory thing.
Yeah.
Like, they're not in a playoff position right now as we speak.
Right. And I think that road trip, we did say, they have to get at least 500 to remain in that sort of playoff contention position, which they did do, but losing that, yeah, the Edmonton and the Pittsburgh ones definitely sting as like contests we could have at least got some points out of, and you'll look back at those when we get through tougher like come up against tougher opponents, in the months ahead, and you just think, oh, we could have used that win.
Yeah. Any other big takeaways that you want to take from these two games? I was kind of thinking about this over the weekend, and I'm not sure if you would agree, but I'll throw it out there. Let me ask you, is Brock Besser having a good season, a bad season, or a mediocre season?
I think mediocre might be a bit harsh, but I don't think he's playing at his best, his like best he can. And I think there was always going to be a drop off with like he and PD's chemistry. Like it was so hyped that I don't think, it was going to live up to that necessarily. I do think that we're slowly starting to see the secondary scoring pick up, and we'll need to see that continue to happen because, like the Oilers can't win the cup on McDavid and Draisaitl alone. I know they think they can, but by the same token, we can't let PD and Brock carry this entire team.
Okay. I watched and I thought to myself, like, Besser's got 11 goals on the year in 28 games, which puts him right around that same sort of pace he's been at the last couple years, 29, 26 goals in his first two seasons. I just like I guess I expected a little bit more. Like I expect Besser to be flirting more around 35 goals.
Yeah.
And it's splitting hairs, of course, but for a guy who gets as much power play time as Brock Besser does, plus he's riding on that top line with Pettersson and Miller for the majority of the season, I just expected maybe for Besser to be a little bit more than what he's currently shown.
Yeah, I will say yesterday, I really enjoyed seeing him so emotional in that game. He was
fired up.
He was fired up, like from taking that.
Maybe he heard you call him boring.
That was a while ago, so he'll be a bit slow on the old news.
You're not going to live that down. You know that, right?
You
essentially called him boring Brock Besser.
I think the words I used were personality of a cheese sandwich, which I stand by. And all our very intelligent C4 listeners know that I was not talking about his play on the ice. I was not saying that he's a bad person. I think he's a very nice person, but he's boring.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it was fun to see him play fired up, like taking that stick in the mouth, not getting a call, and it was just fun. It was just, remember like Daniel Sedin, his last couple of seasons when he just started shoving back? It was like that, and it was fun. So I would love to see that again.
We're going to take a bit of a break when we come back talking about the Alex Burrows Ring of Honour night. That's coming up. I'm going to the game. You're going to the game. We're both going to the game.
Wow.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Twinsies it is. Should we wear the matching shirts too?
We could.
No, we won't. Take a break. Come back. C4 Podcast, CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
He liked to say the F word.
Well, then get the here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't.
You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
Is it okay for coaches to use vulgar language in the NHL nowadays?
Depends what you mean by vulgar language.
You know what? It has become...
F's and Jeffs are fine.
I don't want to say it has become a witch hunt of sorts, but there have been a lot of players coming out talking about coaches doing this and that. And I honestly, I don't know how to feel about it.
Okay. I would say that's a bad comparison because witch hunt was...
You know what I mean, though. Like,
okay, but that was actually literally targeting innocent people. I would say I really hate the justification from you get from like American privacy laws about if you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. But I would say it applies here. Like, these aren't players complaining about being yelled at when they lose.
Yeah, this is actual abuse.
Yeah,
which I understand. That is a serious allegation, of course. So
yeah, like throw out the F's and Jeffs, yell at a player when he's losing, like when he's not doing great, but like actually the things that are coming out now I think go way beyond that, and I think these coaches have gotten away with it for far too long. So literally they probably got like decades worth of income that they kind of took, like stole in a way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like they've gotten away with it for a while, so I don't feel that bad for them.
Yeah, fair enough. Getting back to the Ring of Honor game coming up tonight, Anna, if you're listening to this on a Tuesday, Vancouver Canucks taking on the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah.
Alex Burrows will be inducted into the Vancouver Canucks Ring of Honor. A reminder, you got tickets.
Yes.
I got tickets. I'm wondering how many people out there are getting their tickets for this game on the Vivid Seats app. Did you know, Anna, that if you get the Vivid Seats app, you can actually save up to $100 with the promo code OVERTIME. So if you're looking to get hot tickets for games just like this one, maybe you're thinking about getting the Sedin's night coming up not too far from now.
Yeah, that's in February.
Make sure you get the Vivid Seats app and use the promo code OVERTIME to get up to $100 off on your purchase.
How excited are you for tomorrow?
I'm pretty excited.
It's cool, right? I mean, just like Burrs is just such a fan favorite. It's really great to see him honored.
I'm not going to lie. What sold me on getting these tickets at relatively last minute, 10,000 free Alex Burrows bobbleheads will be given out.
Yeah. That was what really sold you.
That was the seal of the deal. Like, I collect a lot of bobbleheads, and an Alex Burrows bobblehead is pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't collect bobbleheads, but I do have a little shelf where I keep my sporting memorabilia, and yeah, for sure that will go on it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. Right next to my Bo Horvat and Gus bobblehead.
Nice.
They sold those.
I have I think I have a signed puck from like Barkowski or something ridiculous like that. It was a gift. I didn't choose that. And then I have a signed cricket ball, which is like, that's the ultimate. But also, oh, now I'm having a mind blank. What's the anthem singer called?
I don't know what you're talking about.
The big dude anthem singer.
Mark Donnelly.
Mark Donnelly. Thank you. Yeah, he gave me a signed picture of himself in the sports bar at Rogers Arena. That was a weird night, but yeah. So I have that. Oh, did you know also that apparently there's going to be, like, maybe you read this too. There are a certain amount of autographed Alex Burrows bobbleheads that will be made available as well. That's exciting.
I can't remember how many of them, but he's like signing a few, and then they'll be like randomly distributed.
It'll be
so there's
random.
also
it won't be like first in the door.
No, it won't be like the club seat members that are only getting them too either. But yeah, they'll be randomly given out. So like, fingers crossed. Like,
that's cool.
Alex
Well, that might take pride of place if I get a signed one.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: what is your favorite Alex Burrows memory? We asked Cam Robinson this one too.
I mean, easily slaying the dragon.
Everyone says slaying the dragon too, but let's think of one that's not a slay the dragon moment. Anything that really stands out for you?
I don't know. He's just one of those players that like every night he would just get out there and be a pest. So I don't know. Just like almost any night he's playing with the Sedins when he becomes the third Sedin brother. Do you have a particular one that stands out?
Okay, so I said this one earlier to Cam, and I'll say it again. Is the one where the Canucks were like in the midst of a 10-game losing streak, and Burrows bumped the streak with like seconds to go in the game, and he's like breaking the stick over his knee at around center ice. I think it was against the Carolina Hurricanes, and I said this to Cam Robinson earlier. Right.
So Sean has also brought that up. I just remembered also him when we broke Detroit's winning streak. They had like,
I remember that one too.
And he broke the stick on that. That's up there too. Yeah, that was fun because it was just really annoyed them. I remember watching that game middle of the night in the UK. I think my computer had broken, so I was like on the family computer trying my best to stay quiet and celebrate quietly. But yeah, that was cool.
Some other Alex Burrows memories that I remember that really stand out for me. I'm not sure if you remember this one. 2009. Were you watching then?
Before my time.
Yeah, it was before your time. 2009, Vancouver Canucks, St. Louis Blues, round one of their playoff series, and the Canucks are up 3-0 in that series, and Alex Burrows scores the overtime goal on Chris Mason 5-hole to sweep the Blues in overtime in Game 4.
Yeah.
That was a great memory as well.
That's pretty cool.
Other great Alex Burrows memories that I remember is, and it's kind of funny to sort of laugh back at it now. Probably wasn't at the time. But the whole biting thing with Patrice Bergeron.
Oh, yeah. And a fan held up a sign at the next game saying, "You can bite me anytime, Burrows." So,
okay, that's inappropriate.
That's funny, though.
That one kind of stands out for me. Of course, the game 2 overtime winner against the Boston Bruins as well, against Tim Thomas. Alex Burrows, the wraparound.
Yeah, someone actually posted that on Twitter this morning, so I watched it again. It was nice.
Is that one better than... Like, I have this internal debate every now and then, and I kind of go back and forth. And I'll understand, like, the Dragon Slayer one is very important, but that game 2 against Tim Thomas one was also pretty darn good by Alex Burrows.
Yeah, I think it's just in the mind of Canucks Nation, the whole of the Bruins series is tainted by the result. So, and yeah, in their minds, it was probably, it didn't matter in the end in that series, but that's probably the only reason. And that was a series winning goal, the Dragon Slayer. So I can see the debate, but you're right, that it was a great moment, and we really believed at that point.
Yeah. Bearded Canuck bringing this one up is just the close relationship that Burrows had with the late Luc Bourdon. The shooting the arrow into the sky thing, of course, being a tribute to Bourdon.
Yeah.
I think that shows you the kind of heart Alex Burrows had in his playing days, and he held a special place for those who were close to him. That one I obviously always remember every time he fires the arrow into the sky, kind of a thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think you got that right, that the amount of heart Burrows had just cannot be questioned. I mentioned earlier that I was at the athletic event where it was a Q&A with Thomas Drance, and I can share this now because it's been on Twitter today that he's coming out with an article tomorrow, so...
What is it? I've seen a lot of people talk about this thing, but it sounds like it's must-read material.
Yeah, that's from what I've heard. It's must-read.
You can tell me off air.
Yeah, especially if you want, like...
If you got an athletic subscription, or if you don't have one, now's the time to get one.
I mean, it's Cyber Monday, so for our patrons, there might be a deal to be had.
Yeah, that I mean, I've heard a lot of hype about this story that they've got coming out on The Athletic.
But yeah, they're in general, Thomas was just mentioning, just the passion of the guy, starting his career on a team that was called the Growl, and it had 4 or 5 R's in that name.
Was it the Greensboro Growl?
Could be.
I think that's what it was, and it had 3 W's in it. Yeah.
Oh, many R's.
Yeah,
it was
good.
I mean, he's really fought tooth and nail to be where he was.
Let me ask you this. What would make the Ring of Honor night really special?
I don't know. Honestly, just him being there and the whole...
So we talked about the how the season opener or the home opener would look like with the whole naming a captain ceremony and stuff like that. And we talked about how cool would it be if Henrik Sedin was the one who gave the C to Horvat. How cool would it be if you have the Sedins reunited with Burrows? For a little bit of that ceremony.
I do agree with you that they're his most iconic line mates, right?
They got to be there, right?
But you don't want to take away from him, and
you don't want to take away the moment.
Sedin's turning up might take away from Burrows.
That is true, but
maybe
I feel like Burrows, the person, would want them to be there with him too. Obviously, the 2 players who helped him achieve the success that he did have.
Yeah, reunite the Sedin's triplets.
I like the one comment here from someone who says, "Will Kessler be there?"
Oh God, I hope not. That's the one thing that would ruin it for me.
It's like Marc Messier showing up to the captaincy ceremony.
Oh yeah, could you imagine? It's so funny how the rest of the league just do not get it, and how how Rogers constantly misjudge how much that the Canucks fans still hate Messier.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I have a special place in my heart for Alex Burrows, and he helped achieve and exercise those demons. And, without Alex Burrows, that 2011 run doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean...
Simply put, it does not happen.
Him and Luongo and the Sedins were just the actual
Wow, you don't even mention Ryan Kessler's name, but whatever.
Okay, he won 1 series for us.
I mean, it's a pretty important series.
It was important, but... I wouldn't say he's the key to us getting to...
Okay, let me ask you this, and we're not taking anything away from Alex Burrows. Is Ryan Kesler getting a Ring of Honor?
No.
Wow.
I do think he made a significant contribution to this team, but I think it's difficult considering the Ring of Honor isn't like a statistics thing. It's about like your relationship with the team, and Burrs is untainted and Kessler's isn't.
You know what? I don't disagree with you, but I will say, like, there was a time when we were like, there's never going to be a time when Pavel Burr gets his number retired by Vancouver. And time does heal all wounds. Pavel Burr had wanted to trade out of Vancouver, Anna.
Okay, sure, but I think, is Kessler as an exceptional a player as Pavel Burr was?
No, of course not.
Of course not. So that, it was just, he's such an exceptional talent. He overrode any ill feeling. Also, time, yeah, as you say, heals many wounds. I do think, reflecting on it, there are some people who disagree with Pavel Burr's number being retired just because of that. So I think if you try and put Kessler in the Ring of Honor, there'll be a substantial backlash.
Yep, fair enough. Anna, as we wrap things up here on the C4 podcast, how about you tell people where they can find us?
You can find us on Twitter at the C4 Podcast.
Yep.
On Facebook.com.
Facebook.com/the C4 podcast.
Yeah,
I'll help
again.
you.
That's all right. I was getting there.
I know. Okay.
I'm
Continue.
just taking it at my own pace. We're on Discord, and that's where, one, you get all the hockey chat, and we also have a channel if you just want to chat some nonsense as well.
These three guys in here right now, they're just going off tonight. Like, Nexus, Bearded, and Trevor Goldie, they are just having a party of their own right now.
I know. You guys want to join the party and listen live, debate live, yell at each other live via Discord. You want to be on there.
Like Beardy Canuck just brought up, like, is BX a Ring of Honor?
Yes. Hell yes.
Okay, so this is weird. Like, okay, like, what did BX really do that is that much more than Ryan Kesler?
That's what I'm talking about. The fact that it's Ring of Honor is about your relationship with the team. He was a key player for one, but two, like,
Ryan Kesler was a key player.
Has such a good relationship with the team.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's sports is entertainment, right? And at the heart of it, something like this is to honor a player that's meant a lot to the fans. And BX has done that for sure.
I will say this, like, the book has not closed on Vancouver's story with Ryan Kesler. Like, obviously Ryan Kesler, still rightfully so, when he plays, gets booed every time he touches the puck at Rogers Arena. That said, I really hope that there will be a time and a place where Vancouver fans can accept Ryan Kesler back into their quote-unquote collective fans' hearts.
Okay, I just wouldn't hold your breath on that.
I know.
Sports fans have long memories.
Yeah.
See Mark Messier. Just to finish up my point.
Yeah, sorry.
About where you can find our Discord. It's at bit.ly/C4 Discord. That's bit.ly/C4 Discord, all caps.
All right, Anna. Any thoughts before we let you go here on the C4 podcast?
No, just me, like all of our listeners, looking forward to hearing your chat with Cam Robinson, his words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just excited for that. Excited for Burrows night.
Yeah, it's a hot... Honestly, I'm surprised that there were even tickets available, like a week before the game.
Yeah. Is it just because the Ottawa Senators are boring?
Well, I'm hoping, now that I'm going, like, I'm hoping the Canucks just put up, like, a 10 burger on the Senators.
Just quick off the rails before we go. Have you heard about the stories coming out today about what the Ottawa Senators have been doing with their time off?
So I heard this very anecdotally. Mark Borowiecki, like, breaking up armed robberies or something like that.
I don't know if it was armed, but
he clotheslined a guy.
He clotheslined a guy. He
I
was
saw
armed.
Chris tweet GIF. Was it GIF thing?
GIF. Let's not start this again. GIF.
The clothesline from hell thing. Like,
yeah.
You don't even know what that's from, do you?
Well, it's from wrestling.
Yeah, okay.
That's all I need to know. Like, yeah, he was armed with his huge guns, presumably.
That was terrible.
But yeah, saving, someone's bag, which I heard had passports in, so I'm sure they are very grateful that they got that back. They were also donating their spare food from their team meal to the homeless.
Yeah.
So, they might be boring, but they're good guys.
We just got some breaking news, Anna, here from Elliot Friedman. It's been rumored all night, but Las Vegas will be acquiring Chandler Stevenson from the Washington Capitals.
Ooh.
That is not a breaking news. I just wanted to see what your reaction was going to be.
And that was it. Ooh.
Very last thing before I let you go. You're about due for a C4 of the movies. Right?
Yeah, did you enjoy my one of Top Gun?
Yeah, it was all right.
Where I got very annoyed at it.
At the raw, like, masculinity that had to take place throughout the entirety of that movie.
Yeah. Do you have a suggestion? Is that what's happening?
I don't remember. Like, you can help me refresh my mind. Did you do a Christmas-themed one? Have you done Christmas movies recently?
No.
I wonder if you should do a Home Alone marathon or a Die Hard marathon.
Oh, wait. Have I done Home Alone? I watched Home Alone.
Yeah.
Did I? I must have.
Have you seen Die Hard, though?
I have seen Die Hard, but I've seen only the first one. I actually studied it in film school, so that might ruin it.
Die Hard is a Christmas movie,
and
right?
I did do Home Alone. I remembered for C4 at the movies.
Die Hard, Christmas movie, yes or no?
Yes, because they put so much effort of playing that Christmas song at the end. So I think it's a Christmas movie.
It's a Christmas movie, I agree.
The audience decide.
This is a age-old debate that always gets talked about around this time of year, and it's I maintain Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Thank you for those who have been listening live. A shout out to, again, our patrons who are listening live right now in Discord. We got a couple more episodes left to go, of course, before the holiday break, and we're going to get a Christmas special as well, I believe, before it's all said and done for our patrons as well. So on behalf of the Chris Golden at Lightforce, who's not here, and at Adam FOC, Adam O'Donnell Carter, he's at Steamworks. Get the happy hour special. I'm Matt Lee. She is Anna Forsyth at aforsyth03. I'm Matt Lee _61 on Twitter. All that said, we are out.